This week on Dig Me Out.
There are always ways of telling they are crazy about me. Grass is what I'm after. Try Scott on
With your hosts, Jason Ziak and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. Join the union to vote on albums, pick one to discuss with us on the show, get access to bonus episodes, and our private Discord community. Keep the podcast ad-free and make the next episode happen by joining us at digmeoutpodcast.com. Well, Jay, we're back with another poll episode. This time, there were 4. The polls have shrunk from 9 to 4 to make things more interesting.
Yeah, I like to shake it up here now and then.
Well, this way it's less spread out. You don't have like 5 albums getting, votes within one vote of each other. You really get more of a concerted or condensed voting with this. And
the community is really seems to be wanting to listen to everything too. So 4 is more realistic for people to actually sample before they vote than 9. That's a lot to ask. So,
well, God bless them for wanting to listen to all of it. I don't, because we're usually recording every week, so I don't have time to listen to every album that comes across the poll. So I just wait for the poll to end and then I listen.
We don't vote, so
yes, that's true. Also, we are not allowed to participate in the fun, but our May tournament had some fun. It was a close race down to 1 vote separating first and second place. And the suggestions were all over the place. We had Keith Miller submitted Birdbrain by Buffalo Tom. That's the second album by Buffalo Tom. Patrick Testa selected Hellacious Acres by Dangerous Toys.
Nice.
Again, sophomore album. Eric Peterson suggested Riding the Tiger by Glucifer. I don't know if that's their first or their second record. I'm mainly familiar with Tender is the Savage, which came out in like 2000 or something like that. And then Gavin Reed suggested 5 Wicked Ways by Candy Harlots. And this is not a bad one. Like, I knew 3 of the 4 bands on this. I didn't know Candy Harlots, but I'd heard of Dangerous Toys. And obviously I know Glucifer and Buffalo Tom. Same with you. Did you know Candy Harlots?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I was obviously pulling for the Glucifer album. I don't know that I've listened to that one like you, even though I'm a big fan of the band. I don't. So I was kind of hoping I'd get an excuse to go back and listen to it.
I have sampled the early Glucifer, but I'm really familiar with like Tender is the Savage, and then the album that comes after that, which was that Basement Apes, or was that before that? Automatic Thrill is the one that comes after Tender is the Savage. I think Basement Apes comes before Tender is the Savage, and then there's like an EP in there or something, and with the helicopters. Anyway, long story short, Glucifer didn't win. Came in second place to Buffalo Tom and Birdbrain. Now, we've talked about Buffalo Tom not once, but twice on this podcast. Just recently, we revisited their third album, Let Me Come Over. And then many moons ago, Bill Janovitz, lead singer guitarist of Buffalo Tom, stopped by, and we went through their 4th album, Big Red Letter Day, like track by track, and we had a long discussion about that record, the making of it. That must have been, was that like 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago?
2014.
So 9 years ago. Wait, no, 11 years ago. Jeez. Wow. That was only 3 years into the podcast. We were really ambitious back then.
Yeah.
Honestly, we just ran out of people to talk to. We've talked to literally everybody. So
we made it through our list. We're like, okay, that's good.
Yep. I did start a list when we had the podcast kicked off, I was like, who do I want to talk to? And I made a list of everybody I could possibly want to talk to. And we got through like quite a bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was realistic too. Let's just say I didn't have like hugely popular, like I didn't have like Alanis Morissette on that list or Billy Joe Armstrong. You know, I made it reasonable for people like, oh, well, that's like a more of a mid-level band. Or they're not active anymore. Maybe they would be interested in talking. So, but here's the question. Buffalo Tom, obviously I know you know the albums after this. Had you listened to either of their first two records?
Oh, I don't know them well. If I did, I probably sampled them at some point just to kind of get in a sense of what they sounded like. But my sweet spot is Sleepy Eye, Big Red Letter Day. I like Three Easy Pieces. I bought the last couple that they put out on vinyl, going back to Quiet and Peace. So it's one of those bands where I'll get really into an album, but I don't know. It doesn't push me to like have to go listen to the whole catalog, if that makes sense. Like
right.
I get into an album, I like I really like the album, I enjoy it, and then I kind of move on, and it doesn't. Some bands you hear and you're like, oh my God, I have to listen to everything they've ever put out.
Yep.
They're not one of those bands for me.
Yeah, and this was a band that I came to in college, which I probably talked about this in the previous podcast. So I've been with them as the releases have been coming out since Big Red Letter Day. My roommate in college was a fan of theirs, starting with probably this album and then Let Me Come Over. He loved Let Me Come Over. He had that CD in our dorm room, and I like remember him listening to Tail Lights Fade and stuff like that back then. But I don't really remember this one. I know I went back and listened to him at some point, but I had not revisited this record in a very long time. So a little bit of history specifically on this record. It was released in 1990 on Beggar's Banquet. It was produced by the band with Sean Slade and Jay Mascis of Dinosaur Jr. They were so I don't know if we got into this with Bill. I don't think we did, but Jay and Bill and the rest of the guys, they knew each other from like high school. Like they went back a ways, and so but I think Jay was a little older. So when Jay was putting out albums with Dinosaur Jr., that's when Buffalo Tom was still like kind of forming and hadn't really come together yet. And when they put this record out, which was their second record, by this point, because they had worked with Jay 2 records in a row, they were being nicknamed Dinosaur Jr Jr. Which fun. I think makes sense, because if you go back and listen to that first album, it's a lot noisier, like early Dinosaur Jr. Now on this record, Birdbrain, Jay Mascis is not credited because he wasn't on the record label, so they gave him a pseudonym. His name is Monty Rose in the credits, and the story behind that is they were listening to different songs in the studio, like, you know, just for fun while they were recording it with Sean Slade at Fort Apache, and somebody played Bad Motor Scooter by Montrose, and Jay was really into it, so Montrose became Monty Rose, and that's how he got the nickname for the pseudonym for this record, so that he laid down. Not only did he help produce it, he did the solo in the first song, Birdbrain.
Interesting. Okay.
And so it's just the three of them: Bill Janovitz on vocals and guitar, Chris Coburn on bass, and this is the first time he sings lead vocal on the song Baby. He didn't sing any leads on the first album. And then Tom McGinnis on drums. And then Sean Slade plays a little guitar on Bleeding Heart, track 10, and he sings backing vocals on Crawl. And so there's 2 acoustic songs at the end of the record: Heaven, which is a psychedelic furs song, and then Reason Why, which was a full band, like not live, but like loud song from the first record. And they decided to do an acoustic version for to tack on at the end of this. I did actually do a little research just to get a little bit more info. So they recorded, this came out in 90. The first album came out in 88, but they basically recorded like nonstop so that they had a bunch of material. So this was, a lot of this material was already recorded. They made the first record and then went out on tour, but they were like constantly recording whenever they could get some money. Basically, they would just get money and then go into the studio. So it wasn't like they locked out like 6 weeks and knocked out a record. Like it was kind of piecemealed. More so the first record, because they were literally getting a couple $100 at a time from this like European label that was going to put out their stuff. And they would be like, here's $300, go record a song. And they were like, okay, make one more song. And that's how they kind of made the first record. And this one was a little bit more coherent in terms of they spent a little bit more time at the studio in consecutive days, but they had like literally like they would get like 3 days and they'd say, you got to nail these on like the first or second take. Because we're not made of money. So right. That's the history of this particular album. They had talked to SST about putting out the record, which was the label that like a ton of amazing punk and hardcore bands were on, but the label is kind of falling apart due to money issues at this point. So they thought better, like they were really enamored with SST because it was legendary. They're like, yeah, we're just going to stay with Beggar's Banquet. We're just going to go with that. They seem to know what they're doing with their money.
Right.
That could have gone very badly. He said that the contract was very short and it said, we'll try hard to get your records in the stores of the SST contract. Like, no, I think that should probably be a part of the deal.
See, that's what, I mean, if record labels have one job, that's kind of it.
Kind of the thing. You got a distributor.
Unless you're planning on giving us a giant advance so we don't have to record piecemeal.
Yeah.
Which I don't think they're going to do.
Yep. So we got some comments from our patrons who voted for this and for other records. But here's what they said. Scott Helgrim said, ugh, that Dangerous Toys album was such a disappointment after their excellent debut. One fun thing I remember is that there was a contest, I think, where you could win a title to an acre of land in Hell, Michigan because of Hellacious Acres.
I think I remember that. That sounds vaguely familiar. Like an MTV thing or something?
Probably. Eric Peterson went with his vote. Keith said, I submitted Buffalo Tom before diving into many of the podcasts, but they've gone through various phases in their career. I believe exploring an album like Birdbrain, which retains some noise while venturing into more melodic direction, would be fascinating. It's especially true since they were carrying a Dinosaur Jr Jr tag, a comparison I never quite grasped, mainly because Bill and Chris have a completely different vocal style from Jay Mascis. And that was it. So all the people who voted for Buffalo Tom, none of them said anything except for Keith. You sons of you, gotta make it hard on us. Oh, I forgot to mention at the top of the show, so I'm going to do it now. We need to welcome our newest patron member joining the union, Keith Tasker. Welcome. I saw that you joined the Discord this week.
Nice.
I think there were some suggestions for the aughts episodes that were tossed in,
nice.
Which we always appreciate that. We'll have an aughts episode coming up just around the corner. I should protest that since my pick lost.
Another runoff.
Yeah.
It's decided by a vote.
We have a lot of runoffs here.
I know.
But that's how democracy works. It dies in darkness.
You can vote on Substack as well if you're a paid subscriber there, which has made it more competitive because the two audiences can't see each other. So you don't think there's some voting of like based on, trying to get somebody over the edge to win or show better. And if you can't see the other poll.
Are they blocked from seeing it? Did you go into VPNs and block them so that they can't see the Substack poll if
we're
they're
not
on
that high
Patreon?
tech. I'm just assuming that's nobody's going to go through the effort of opening up two polls and looking at them at the same time.
Yes, the 2 clicks that would require Substack and then poll.
Look, man, it's 2025. We barely have the energy to scroll anymore.
That's true.
But forget the clicking.
I don't even want to touch my phone. I just want my eyes to move stuff up. I'm gonna be like, yeah, no. Just can you work on that? Can you make that happen? Thank you. Let's get into this record. Let's talk about Birdbrain by Buffalo Tom. Tell me what worked for you on this album.
Yeah, it's a looser version of the band that I'm used to. Obviously, the next record, things get much tighter, more melodic, higher production, just overall. You're hearing a band here that's, still got a little bit of that jangle that you later hear. But it's more of ramshackle, kind of chaotic jangle, with some distortion layering going on. It's rough around the edges. It's dangerous. These songs sound a little chaotic, like they're falling off the rails at any moment. Vocally, I really liked it. So one, just having that clearly different side of the band I hadn't heard before, or had spent a lot of time with, musically, but then also vocally. It's interesting to hear him on this record. It sounds like somebody exploring his voice, trying to figure out like what he is as a singer. And he ends up in this space quite often on this record where that it's angsty. It's a little drawn out, the lines. It's a little drunken sounding. And it reminded me a lot of Greg Dooley, which I never would have associated Bill Janovich and Greg Dooley together. But the way he's singing on this record is very similar to, and at times you hear it in Birdbrain, like when they get to that chorus, you're like, oh shit, that's an early Afghan Wigs chorus. So that was a lot of fun. You don't hear a lot of people sing like him. And obviously this is even before or at the same time as Julie's kind of finding his voice. So it's probably a sound and a style that was permeating, indie rock at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting hearing him in that space where it's a little less on top of the beat and, sharp, and it's a little bit kind of falling behind and drawn out, a little almost slurry, kind of angry-ish. It was cool to hear his voice like that. You hear a lot of range. He gets pretty low, but then he snaps into more of his melodic, raspy, kind of almost roots rocky delivery that becomes familiar later. So you hear that on Bleeding Heart and Enemy, and then the acoustic tracks at the end. I think you really hear it come together. Oh yeah, this is the band, at the core that you hear on all the records after. And then just rhythmically, it's a lot more adventurous than I was expecting. It's not just 4 on the floor kind of drum beats and bass. There's very active. There's a lot of drum fills and at times chaotic sounding drumming. Which I didn't expect, which keeps things, high energy. So yeah, for me, it's hard to listen to this and not bring the context of the other records.
Mm-hmm.
So what's working for me is really in that it's thinking about their catalog, thinking about their sound, and then how this fits in there. And this is, I think what works is it's a nice slice of like 1990 alternative rock. What worked for you?
Well, like I said, I hadn't listened to this in a while, and I remembered it being noisy. I think I conflated it more with the first record because this isn't as noisy as I thought it was going to be. And it does sound like the proper bridge between the really noisy, like they talk about how they layered guitars on to just create a wall of noise on the first album. And this is more restrained. This is more realistic to a 3-piece. And you can hear the beginnings of what is going to happen on Let Me Come Over. They're going to slow down a little bit. You have a song, like you mentioned, Enemy, which you can hear the sort of more, I guess you'd say, like angsty end of things that you get with songs on Let Me Come Over, and then even more refined on Big Red Letter Day. And like you said, you get Bill kind of like figuring out what he can do as a vocalist, successfully and unsuccessfully. And you hear him taking chances, not just with how he sings, but how he constructs verses and choruses. For example, Birdbrain, the hook of that is really the verse. When he's singing Birdbrain and that refrain over and over again, that's not the chorus part of the song. The chorus is fine, but like that's the part that sticks in my head. And the chorus is a bit more, like you said, it's a little more like 1990 alternative rock, where it's not a big blatant chorus, but it's melodic. Mm-hmm. It's also I don't remember them, I guess, because again, I'm so used to hearing sort of a cleaner guitar. I just remember a lot of like G's and C's and D's when I was learning guitar and playing these songs. And this is a lot more minor key on this album. It's a lot darker than you really normally hear with Buffalo Tom stuff. Like you hear melancholy on Buffalo Tom songs, but there's like anger on some of these songs.
Yep. And
that was interesting to hear. You can kind of hear it in the whole band. Like the whole band is sort of figuring things out. Like Crawl, Tom McGinnis sounds like he's channeling Keith Moon on that song, just doing these like huge tom rolls, like every verse, in between every verse. Which was not something that you heard. Like his playing is so tight and refined on the next couple of records. Like you don't hear that. So that was interesting to hear.
Please call across the sea. Please call across to me. You can take me anywhere. Please take me, I don't care. Please call across the silent door. 40 smiles, 500 miles. Can you take this trip? Can you take this leap into my life, one big hit? Please call across to me. Please call across the silent.
Fortune Teller was the song to me where I thought, okay, this sounds like where the band's going. Like poppy, catchy, it's like 320 or something like that. It's a pretty tight song, and it just had the melodic vibe of where they would go down the road. I thought it was interesting to include the Psychedelic Furs cover, only because I think for some reason I think of like early 90s, late 80s alternative as being like, especially when it's noisy, as sort of turning its back on a lot of those new wave bands and those especially like those clean, like the Furs and Echo and the Bunnymen and those kind of bands that were all very clean and with their guitar tones, chimey, a little more jangly.
Yep.
And you don't really hear that on this record at all. But then for him to bust that out, you also like, and it's a tough thing to do because that also reveals that like he can sing because he's hitting it on that song.
Yep.
But also that's the best song, theoretically it's the best song on the album.
Yep. Songwriting wise, you mean?
Yeah, songwriting wise.
Yep. I'd agree.
That's a dicey thing to do, to put a song that's better than anything that you did on your album. I mean, the Black Crowes did a cover, which you could argue that some of the songs on that debut are just as strong as Hard to Handle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's again, in the context of their catalog, it's interesting because to me that song foreshadows their own songwriting in a lot of ways, that will come. So it's interesting to hear. I think they pull it off, like they bring their own, sound to it. You can still tell it's the original. The lead guitar on that song is really cool. There's like this lead that's playing through the whole thing. That's really interesting.
There's too many kids wanna hold you down, and the world at the window gone underground, and I'm standing on ice when I say that I don't feel pain, and I scream at the fools wanna jump my train, and heaven is the home of our hearts, and heaven don't tear you apart, and heaven is the home of our hearts, and heaven.
But it's just out of context of their catalog. I would agree with you. It'd be like weird if you just had never heard this band before, put this album on, you'd be like, oh, this is the strongest song, and then you'd read it's a cover, you're like, well, damn. But in the context of their larger catalog and what's to come, it's kind of a cool little nuggets.
Yeah, it is. It's both a indication like melodically they're going to be a bit more catchy going forward, but also embrace the acoustic guitar, which is not heard. I mean, I think they do the thing with like Jay Mascis does, where he has a very bright electric and then adds the acoustic to add a little.
It's layered on a couple songs.
Layer,
yeah.
And so I will say I was surprised at how much more I liked this record than I thought I was going to, based on what I remembered of it, because I was thinking, oh, this is just going to be noise. And it's really not. It's a much more refined record while still being kind of fuzzy and scratchy, and you can hear them still, figuring it out. The songs are a bit more straightforward. There's not the wordplay that Bill is really good at. There's some of that appears here, but not like across the whole album. In terms of what doesn't work, let me just switch into there. Like, I like the music to Enemy, but that She's My Enemy thing, just saying that repeatedly in the song, I was like, okay, this kind of sounds like a high school like diary of a mad breakup. Like it's a little juvenile in the context of a more or developing rock band. And I don't know about you, but I had a tough time when Bill went low, like on Skeleton Key.
Yep.
I'm glad he doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah, that was in mine.
Got to be the worst got my free pass, my skeleton key. I can open every door that stands in front of me.
Well, go ahead. Finish your points.
No, go ahead. What did you want to say on that?
So I mentioned, well, we both talked about him finding his voice on this album, exploring, and it's almost from line to line that it works and then doesn't work. I wouldn't say there's any whole songs that don't work vocally. It's just there are lines or sections or verses. Skeleton Key is a good example. He goes into like this low bellow kind of thing that doesn't work. He does it again on at a point in Enemy, which parts of that song I really like a lot, and then there's other points where he does this vocal thing that you're just like, nah, like he just doesn't know what to do, and he sort of goes this like really low bellow thing that's bad. So it's just very inconsistent vocally. It makes it a little and also even just how formed the vocals are. There's some songs where the vocals are just pushed back, not up front and present. They're weird in the mix. They don't sound confident, or they sound less confident. So, and then there's others where it's right, it's right up there in your face, and it sounds like as you would expect. Like you can almost tell on some of these songs, either they were recorded at different times and sort of the mood and whatever was going on infected it, or the different stages of his songwriting, or even just clear ideas of what to do. Some of them feel like, oh, in this song I get like he knows what he wants to do. And another song, like, I'm not sure he knows what he wants to do. Like he's kind of just following the guitar and bellowing along.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is definitely an issue with him. I don't really know exactly how old he was at this point. This is 1990. So he was born in 66. Let me do the math here. What does that make him? 24? This
Sure.
is his second record. I think so. I think that's 24. So yeah, I mean, you're gonna be figuring it out. So it's interesting that he chose to figure it out on the record in terms of putting some stuff. I'd be curious to ask him, not in an insulting way, but like, what do you think of those vocal takes now that you went super deep? Enemy, like it's just it caught me off guard almost at how low he got.
But then at the end of that song, when they're like, it's really a big crescendo, he's like screaming and it sounds great.
Yeah.
It's in those like slower parts where there's not a lot going on and the lyric isn't changing, to your point, just kind of bashing that line into your head. It almost sounds like, well, I don't know what to do, so I'll just try to go lower and try to get all booming.
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever heard him return to that style on any record after this.
No. It really stood out as like, ooh, well, I'm not sure he knows what he wants to do here.
Yeah. So in terms, it's an interesting record in that it's an interesting artifact now that I know the albums after this so well, and I can hear so much of what's going to happen with this, and it's just like, oh, it's close, like it's almost what they were going to be, and there's just like something off in some of these songs, whether it's his vocal or the band just like locks into something and doesn't know how to get out of it. Like if there's certain rhythms you kind of like lock into, and then or progressions, and then there's not enough, just not enough experience to go, okay, this is now the part where we can do this. You
Yeah.
just kind of stick with the one thing for the most part.
Yeah, some of the chaotic rhythm stuff. I found myself when it really needs the guitars on this record. Portions where the guitars drop and it gets a little quieter, sparse, or tries to be rhythm driven. Just the bass and drums are not tight enough to carry it. It's kind of sometimes the Dinosaur Jr formula.
Yeah.
Where the drums and the bass are a little like, can be a little rough and sloppy, or like, not kind of the meat of the song. And then the guitars are really what's pulling everything together, which is an unconventional way to write rock music, which works great for Dinosaur Jr. and Jay Mascis, but not great for others because you have to have a monster guitar player, I think, for that to work. And there's times in this record where it sounds like they're trying to maybe use that formula, and it doesn't come together until you get the layered guitars. They put in those acoustics, and there's two electrics, and then, or they hit like a really good, compressed distortion tone, and it gets big, and then everything comes together. But when you just have to listen to some of the bass and drum stuff on here, it's not super strong. I also noticed the mastering on this is not good, and that is not something I typically call out. The volume of this record is all over the place. And like there's some songs that started, I'm like, is there something wrong with my speakers? Like the volume would turn down, like what the hell's going on? And I would check it with other songs, and I was like, no, this song's just like way lower than the other ones. I think Crawl was the one where it really popped to me. Like it's right in the middle of the record. That song starts and you're like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
Somebody grabbed my volume knob and turned it down. And I started to like pay attention to it more. And I was like, oh shit, this album is all over the place mastering wise. Did you notice that?
Yeah, it is all over the place. Volume is weird.
Yeah.
Things change. It doesn't sound crisp. It sounds brittle in a lot of places. And I want to go back to the point you made with regards to when the guitar disappears. There are points in Caress where he sounds like he is a mummy. There's just like a drum and bass, and he's like, and I'm like, what the hell is he doing in that part? Is he supposed to sound like a dying cat? Like, why is that happening?
Yeah.
And again, I love Bill's vocal. I love for the sound of it, for what they do, and but man, there are some weird choices on this record. I don't know how to like really wrap my brain around. I almost forgot that one too, because that is such a weird
See,
thing.
to me though, that song I very much related to the Wigs, like early rough Wigs. Is to me what that sounded like.
Yeah. So this was a college radio record. It was not something that was, you didn't hear any of these songs on there was really no mainstream alternative at this point. Anyway, there were nobody was playing Buffalo Tom until basically Big Red Letter Day with like Soda Jerk, thanks to my so-called Life soundtrack.
Sure.
So you've got 3 years before they're even a radio band, really. At this point, this is something that you're throwing this in the light rotation on your college station. That's about it.
Heaven though could have been you could hear, I mean, in an alternate universe, you could imagine that working and being really popular, at least on college radio.
Yeah.
One of those songs that kind of like, it's popular enough there where it seeps into the popular culture a little bit because it's a cover of a, 80s alternative band. And then it's probably the most accessible, not the best written, but also the most accessible song on the record. It's not abrasive in any way.
So, thinking about overall ratings here, is this a Worthy album, better EP, or decent single? What do you think?
I am so in the middle here. I could say, let me walk through my thinking. If it's a worthy album, it's not on its own merits. It's likely because I'm a fan of the band and some of their other albums, and it was fun and it worked for me to be able to put this in context. And it helped me, like, I heard things that you might not hear if you just pick this up on its own.
Mm-hmm.
If you picked it up on its own and just judge it on the merits of it itself, it's probably an EP. I'm gonna go with a worthy album. Just personally, I liked something in most of the songs here. Even a song like Caress, I'm with you. There are parts of that that are cringy, and then there's other parts I like. Enemy, the same thing. There's parts of that. There's like moments, and stretches of that song that I really enjoy, and then there's others where I don't. So it's not like I'm going to be able to come up with an EP where I'm like, cut this song, cut this song. The only song I don't like at all is Skeleton Key, but pretty much everything else, it's just a matter of like moments working better than others. So based on that, I'm going to say it's a worthy album. And especially if you are a fan of this band and you haven't gone back and listened to this, it's worth your time to give it a couple spins. Where'd you land?
Better EP. I did not have that that amount of thinking go into it. I was like, this is a better EP. I would go with Birdbrain, Guy Who Is Me, Crawl, Fortune Teller, Baby, because I always like a Chris Coburn vocal.
Yeah,
he just has a sweet vocal. It is sugary sweet vocal. I love his songs coming up.
That might be the second best written song.
Yeah, you're right. And that was the first song he ever wrote. He wasn't really a songwriter.
Wow.
And then I would add Bleeding Heart and Heaven. So that give me 7 songs that I think are strong enough to make a very good EP. But I would not ever revisit some of these tracks just because the vocal just weirds me out. It's like hearing somebody like, and you're like, are they in pain? I don't want to hear that from them. And because I'm so used to hearing it one way, and then when you hear them singing in a different way, it's like, no, stop that. So that's where I am at. Better EP, worthy album for you. And I believe that there's only one more record. I think there's only one more record for us to check out for Buffalo Tom in the 90s. That's Sleepy Eyed. Did Smitten come out in the 90s or was that in the early 2000s? I don't remember. 98. But Sleepy Eyed's it, folks. How about this? We'll just do a micro 30-second review right here so we get it out of the way.
No, Smitten came out in 98.
Okay, so we got 2 more to do. Smitten, Sleepy Eyed, both worthy albums. Done. We're not doing them.
Is this the band we've reviewed the most?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, band, yes, but artist, I would say no. Because I think we've done 2 John Davis Leaves of Memory albums and 2 John Davis Superdrag albums, right?
Yeah.
So that's 4 of John Davis.
But those were interviews.
Yeah, but we still talked about the albums at that time.
But the Buffalo Tom has won 2 polls.
Oh.
Right?
In consecutive years, yeah. Because it was last year, right? So
I think there's some other bands that may have won 2 polls. To look at that data.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but someone out there in the interwebs could maybe I don't know. Can you collate our data? Is that possible? Collate our files?
We can. It just it requires clicking and scrolling.
I started to make a master list of every episode we did, and I got to 300, and I was like, this is boring.
You don't have to do that. I have them all.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Because I don't know what number we're on anymore.
Yeah, I have it all.
Is this number 10,000?
It's 11,635.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right. So that is one worthy album and one better EP for Birdbrain by Buffalo Tom. Thank you to Keith Miller for suggesting this, or not for suggesting this, for putting it in the poll. Yeah, I guess he was suggesting it. But this was his first win, I believe. He suggested a few records over time, and this is the first time any of his records have won. So
nice.
Congrats, Keith.
Keep at it.
There's no prize for that. Sorry, you get the review is the prize. So sorry, there's no cake or or watch or anything like that. Hey, but if you're out there and you're like, I want to be like Keith Miller, you can do so. You can just go to digmeoutpodcast.com and you can suggest an album like he did to be featured on a future episode of Dig Me Out. And if this particular episode brought back some good memories, positive vibes, maybe you were in the Boston Amherst area in the early 90s, late 80s, or maybe you enjoyed our previous Buffalo Tom episodes, you can join us as a paid subscriber to unlock bonus podcasts covering 70s, 80s, and aughts rocks, new release reviews, and our private Discord community. And of course, it helps us keep the archive of over 800 total episodes free, because that's
seriously,
that's
a lot of people discover I don't know if people realize, but a lot of the main way we get found is people search for these bands and then we show up and they listen to the episodes, and so years after we make them. So, and
the more obscure the better when you're making suggestions, because then we'll own that SEO. That's the whole goal here. We're not really a podcast. We're an SEO company that's building a brand based on obscure 90s artists.
That's our IP.
That's our IP. We're just going to, once we get them all, that's when the advertising revenue will run it. We'll then we'll dump a bunch of like crappy ads and really,
start selling you boner pills. Have you noticed that, like, whenever I listen to podcasts now, or even TV commercials, like half of them are like about pubic hair or balls or like
manscaping?
Can we go back to where gas, or like, can we go back to the time when we didn't talk about any of this stuff?
What's crazy is that one of the podcasts, well, I actually watched the podcast, I shouldn't say I listened to it, is the Conan O'Brien podcast, but I watch it on YouTube. My company has been his sponsor a couple times.
Yeah.
Company that I work for.
Do you sell boner pills?
No, thank you. We sell hair removal.
Diarrhea medication?
We sell hair removal for your privates, for your twigs and berries. That's what we do, and we're proud of it. Anyway, it was just weird to hear him talking about my company, and I was like, what? Not my company, I don't own it, but the big massive company that I work for, because the previous ones have been like Bud Light, Airbnb, like these big national and international companies, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And then I started watching or listening to Good Hang with Amy Poehler, the former member of Saturday Night Live and star of Parks and Recreation, and she's had some great guests on, but her advertisements have been like car companies, because she's on the Bill Simmons podcast network. So like, I'm sure that they have like higher end, advertising. They're not getting boner pill advertising on Bill Simmons.
Blue Chews.
Yeah, they're not. That's not happening. Boner gum. Duh.
So go to our website and sign up or become a paid subscriber so you don't have to hear us do Blue Chew ads.
Yeah.
Or talk about shaving our balls.
No. Manscaping should be an album by Wire in the 80s. It should not be what we talk about. Or was it an EP?
The White Octave, Manscaping.
Yeah. Speaking of tangent, The Constant is Zero came up in my playlist after like I don't know how many years. And I was like, whoa, this song is so good. whatever happened to them? And they made one more record. That's it. And also a Criteria song came up. It Happens, I think, is what the song called. A great song.
Yeah.
Simple song. Like the guitar progression is just like 3 chords, but man, he knows how to play those chords. I miss that era of bands. Criteria.
Yeah,
and
the
White
2020 album is really good too. That's one of those bands. Every album is super solid, and whenever I don't think to listen to them, but when it comes on, I'm like, I gotta go to listen to everything right now.
Yeah.
So good.
All right. For Jay, Tim, we're out. We'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.